Hello, and welcome to episode 19 of the Time to Calibrate podcast. My name is Marc Levesque. My co-host today is Bob Allaby. Unfortunately, Brent Robillard, who usually is with us, is not available as he's traveling to Switzerland to attend the Watches and Wonders show next week. We feel absolutely terrible for him, and we're not a tad jealous. We do, however, have a very special guest. He's none other than Marshall Sutcliffe from the very popular Wristwatch Revival YouTube channel. Welcome to the show, Marshall.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem. So like most watch podcasts, we start the show with wrist checks. So since you're the guest of honor, what's on your wrist, Marshall?
I have possibly my most watchmakery watch. I have my Breguet. It's a 7027, I think is the reference on it. It's the one that has all of the watchworks on the front.
Cool.
The actions on the front with the little baby dial at the top. It's that one. Yeah.
Nice.
I figured I'd wear it's the one that really shows off, how a watch works by putting it front and center and kind of making it the whole dial.
Now, here's a question. Would you actually work on that if it breaks?
I haven't. I think I would not currently. Yeah, I think it's too scary. I could figure it out, I'm sure, but I don't know. I don't think my skills are quite up to that level. So no, I think I would not. I'd chicken out and send it in.
What about you, Bob?
So I'm actually wearing a watch that could probably stand your attention there, Marshall. I actually was in London a couple of weeks ago for British Watchmakers Day, and a friend of mine and I went, and he wanted to go see this shop called Lucky Time Jewelers. Just a little vintage watch shop there, and they had a cool little 60 skin diver, very affordable. I think I paid £60 for it. There's no branding on it. The brand name has fallen off the dial over time. It's surprisingly keeping time somewhat, but so yeah, it's a bit of a mystery watch. I haven't really done a deep dive to figure out exactly what it even is, but it looked cool and it was very affordable, so I grabbed it, and that's what I'm wearing today.
Everything I look for on eBay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wearing a watch that now, come to think of it, probably is not the right watch to wear because I'm wearing my Marathon SAR, White SAR, G SAR, T SAR, whatever.
Quartz,
it's the quartz. It's a quartz.
No, how?
Yes.
I don't buy quartz watches. I don't find them quite as interesting, but I do think they have a certain charm to them now.
Yeah, and it's a high torque quartz. It's a tough beat 'em up kind of watch. I was sitting on my desk this morning, and I don't know if you know, but I do these little comparisons on Instagram of watches. And today I pinned the Marathon SAR versus the CWC Royal Navy watch against each other. And the Marathon was in my head, and I just put it on. And now I'm sitting here thinking I'm talking to a watchmaker, and I'm wearing a disposable movement watch.
I'm deeply offended,
Not good.
Mark. You've offended me, yeah.
Shameful.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I said that Marshall has a popular YouTube channel, I really meant it. With nearly 1 million subscribers, his vast audience consists of much more than just watch nerds like us. I often put on his videos when I need to unwind and listen to something positive while I learn something new at the same time. I describe him to others as the Bob Ross of watchmaking. I have no interest in art. I have no artistic bone in my body. I can barely draw a stick figure. But when Bob Ross would draw mountains and trees, I was transfixed. It's the same way with Marshall's videos. I get excited just as much as he does when the balance spring comes to life. And I too like the sound of a mainspring clicking into the barrel. My family even watches the videos when they play on their TV in the living room. And they usually roll their eyes when I talk about watches. So for them to stop and actually watch for a little bit, that says a lot. And as many of you know, I've been around watches for a very long time, an old fart. And I had a basic understanding of how mechanical watches work. Marshall's videos greatly improved that understanding. And I'm eternally grateful for that knowledge and even more grateful for the entertainment I enjoyed in the process. On behalf of all your viewers, thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, thanks. That means a lot. It's interesting. This is a very online thing for me, right? I went to one of the wind-up watch fairs where I got to actually talk to people who watch the channel, but that is a rarity. So to hear those kind words really means a lot. Thanks for saying that.
No, it's from the bottom of my heart. Honestly, I was talking to Bob before you came on, and this is not part of the outline that I have here, but in the environment that we live in right now, and the constant negativity and kakapupu that's on YouTube everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Watching your stuff, just coming from someone that's positive, has great energy, that knows how to speak in front of a camera or behind a camera. It's phenomenal. We're very pleased to have you on. Now, I've been watching for a while, but I didn't come on right from the beginning. So I've gone through your back catalog over the last few years, and I pick and choose the watches that I'm actually interested in,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a lot of them. But I don't think I ever got your origin story. So what's the origin story for Wristwatch Survival? How did it all get started?
Yeah, I used to work on cars with my dad, and he passed away about 10 years ago, but he was he was a mechanic for his whole life, and he was a car nut. And everybody in my family was a car nut when I was growing up. There was a race on the TV every holiday. That's all they ever talked about. So I kind of grew up in the car culture, and restoring them or working on them on the weekends with my dad a lot. But after he passed away and I had moved, and I lived in an apartment, like working on cars wasn't really on the docket for me at that point. And I had transitioned into more doing digital stuff. I was doing a podcast, I was doing some broadcasting, some streaming, some video stuff, and it was all on the computer. And honestly, I love that stuff. I love working on computers. I'm a computer nerd too. So all that stuff fit. But God, I just missed working with my hands. I missed that visceral thing, the thing you get when you get to hold something made out of metal or wood, and you get to shape it or change it or make it better. And I I had I had gotten into watches a little bit, and particularly into vintage watches a little bit, but they're expensive. And I had this idea that maybe I could buy a broken one and fix it because I'm kind of a mechanical minded person and I could probably figure it out, right? And it turns out not so much. Watches are a pretty steep learning curve. Like you do need to be taught on some level. And I found a channel on YouTube called the Watch Repair channel. It's hosted by a guy named Marc, and he's a 30-year watch repair. And he would put up little tutorials and little videos about how he did his stuff. And I just fell in. I was like, wow, he's kind of my hero. The guy's kind of the GOAT. And I got a chance to meet him, by the way, as an aside, or talk to him, I should say, online. And it was awesome. It was kind of a full circle moment. But at any rate, I watched basically every single thing he did. And one of the things that he suggested while working on a watch was to take a lot of photographs of it. So like you take off one part and then you take a photo, and then you take off a few more and you take a photo, so that if you get stuck when you're putting it back together, you can go back and look for reference. Well, with my other content stuff, I'm like, I got some nice cameras around here. I got some stuff, right? I got some lights. Like I could. So instead, I just filmed it. I just turned on it because I thought, it'd be better than a bunch of random photographs, would just be a video, so I could actually even see how I take it off, how I put it back on.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, and then it was bad, man. The gear started turning. I was like, this footage doesn't look bad. Like I had a macro lens, so it was like kind of up close. I was like, And I've done some voiceover stuff, and I've done a whole bunch for my kind of other career. I've done a whole bunch of live like broadcasting, and the subject that I was covering is a game that's it's a card game, so it's relatively slow paced. So as a live broadcaster, you kind of need to be able to fill the air. It's not a boxing match, right? So, I had to develop the skill over a number of years to kind of talk on the fly and keep a conversation with somebody either in the booth with me or with the viewer who I can't see or hear kind of going. And, and I had the microphones and all that stuff too. So I thought, well, what if I just fired up the microphones and kind of talked about what I was doing, right? Because, the impetus for it was I found it fascinating. Like I just was like, wow, I just cannot believe what's going on inside these watches. And the fact that they're still usable, and you get this really cool thing when you're done that's either working really well or working well and looks good if you do like a full restoration. And then it was off the cliff. I mean, and then I was like, well, how many cameras should I use? And I was in the video editor trying to figure out how to stitch it all together. And then it was kind of, one of those things where once I hit that tipping point, I just didn't look back.
That's cool.
Yeah, I bet the video is a good idea over pictures, because when that click spin goes flying across the room, at least the video will show you which direction it went in.
Oh, dude, I've done the instant replay a lot of times. I get like one frame where I can see it pinging off somewhere. I'm like, all right, get my magnets out and start pointing them in that direction.
So I have a kind of a follow-up to what you're talking about right now, but I've been binge watching the channel the last few days. And first of all, thanks for the effort you put in. The enthusiasm you have totally shines through. I have a YouTube channel myself. I'm also approaching 1 million subscribers. I'm about 980,000 away, but working on it. But I was watching the recent video you did on the Hoyer Carrera. You picked up as and just as an example of one of your videos, what does that really take, like time frame wise, to put together something like that? I mean, and also like with the gear, like how many cameras do you have set up as you're going through the process?
Yeah, so my current setup for the gear, to start there, is I've got 4 cameras. So
Okay.
It's a lot. They're all running simultaneously, and then there's a 5th camera that I'll add in for shots that aren't of my work area. So basically, I have an overhead camera, and then I have a wide shot that shows kind of the whole work surface. And then I have 2 close-up cameras. One of them shows basically the whole movement, and then the other one is actually zoomed it even further to show, it's kind of a super close-up version of that shot.
Yep.
And so it's 4 cameras. And then, believe it or not, I actually use my iPhone for some of the other shots, the ones on the time grapher, the ones on the watch cleaning machine, and then the ones on the microscope. iPhones can shoot in a format called ProRes now, which is like, it's huge. It's 6 gigabytes a minute, by the way. But at any rate, it's really good quality. And so I'm actually able to use those for some of the shots. I wouldn't want it to be one of my main cameras, but it totally would work. So that's what the setup looks like. For that Carrera, I mean, I didn't write it down how long it took to do the whole thing, but I would guess probably like from the day I received the watch till when it was done was probably about 2 months, I would guess.
Wow.
Yeah. That was a tough one. I'm still getting acquainted with chronographs. That was about the 4th one I think I've done. So, I'm still learning somewhat. That's also the first, that's a Valjoux 72 in that. And I hadn't worked on that exact movement before. So a little bit of taking my time, to make sure that it was good. And also that watch is like my dream watch. Like I've wanted that watch forever. And finding one on eBay that was beat to hell, but also had some potential, was a luck. I had to pay way too much for it, but I was happy to do it because that watch is one that I've wanted. That literally is the first vintage watch I ever wanted. Like that model. Yeah. That was the watch that made me say, okay, I can't afford this, but what if I found a broken one, and then led to doing the channel.
So for people that didn't see that video, the funniest part to me was the whole case back removal situation with the crazy glue in the socket. Like, how scared were you doing that? Yeah, I would have been freaking out, man.
Like I was terrified. When I took the socket wrench and put it in the back, and you've got one hand kind of steadying it and one hand on the handle, and you're just going like, am I actually doing this? Like this is, I'm going to now just like this, that's so much force, right? To put in the watch. I mean, we use tweezers, right? I mean, it's not, the amount of force, like once you start putting force into the movement, particularly, that's usually a good time to take a break. Like, it means you're doing something wrong. Like there's almost no procedures that require you to like actively pry or twist or turn anything on that level. And this is a whole 5 levels above that with the leverage from, I was just like, also, I wasn't sure if it would work.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I hope this works. And it turns out it did. Leverage counts. But Yeah, super gluing a socket onto a watch that I spent like $7,000 on, probably not on my list when I started the project.
I was scared for you watching that. So that was obviously a grail for that, if you want to use that kind
It
of
was, yeah.
word. But is there, I'm curious now if there's another piece that's on the radar. Is there another grail or maybe multiples that you're after that you'd
Yeah,
like to
there
add to
are.
your,
There are.
yeah.
I mean, there's always something, right? I try not to fall too hard into that pattern of just always wanting something new, something new, something new. Like
Mm-hmm.
this was a major checkbox for me to get that watch. So I feel pretty settled with it. But the stuff that I look at now are kind of, what if I didn't buy the next 4 watches I was going to buy,
And
for
got
the
the big
next
one.
4 years or something, right? Like I'm looking at like one brand that I've always really loved and would like to own one day is a Lange. You know,
Mm.
not to work on it. I again, that's another one that I wouldn't feel comfortable working on with my skill set. But that's definitely on the list of I would love to own one of those one day type watches. As far as
Mm-hmm.
vintage stuff goes, I think it's fairly typical, the stuff I like for people like our age or whatever, which is like, I like old Rolexes. I like Hoyer a lot. Like I'm a big Hoyer guy. That was where I started my collection as it stands, with buying vintage Hoyer watches. Those are probably some of my absolute favorites, again, going back to my dad and racing and stuff like that.
Yeah, cool.
Have you always been a collector? I mean, I think I saw a Dornbluth on your wrist a couple of times. Were you a collector before you started all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I don't really consider myself a watch collector, but I do own a lot of watches, so I guess I am. I don't um I don't quite approach it in the sense of like collecting just to collect. Like I wear them. I don't have any that I'm just like I just wanted to own this. Like I actually, when that happens, I don't like it very much. um I really pay a lot of attention to what watches I actually pick up and wear on a day-to-day basis, versus the ones that I represent some version of myself that doesn't exist. But yes, I had the Hoyers before that. Again, I wanted the Carrera, but I ended up getting some of the Octavias that I could actually afford from that era, or from a little bit later, from the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s era stuff. And then, yeah, that was a Dornbluth that you saw, and I've had that for probably 5 years now or something. So, I had it, yeah, sometime around when I started the channel. So yeah, I've had a number of watches before that. The passion started sort of simultaneously. It just took me quite a while to actually get to the point of deciding to work on the watches myself and also being, competent enough to do it.
Cool.
Would you work on that Dornbluth?
I would. I haven't. That one I actually would. That one's based on a 6497, which is a movement that I'm very familiar with. That's kind of the one. I mean, most people buy the Chinese Seagull version.
Yeah, to start off with, putzing with it. Yeah.
Yeah, we sell that in the kit for Sutcliffe Hanson and stuff too. So I know that really, really well. And so, I don't know. I think I'd be nervous as hell. It's nicely finished.
It is.
Um,
And it's German silver too, so it might be a little soft.
It might be. It's probably a bad idea, but I think I would work on that one.
Do you work on modern watches at all much on the channel? It seems mostly vintage.
Yeah, almost all vintage. I mean, I would like. I'm not. I'm okay working on them, but they have a much different vibe, and I also feel like the knowledge that I have about working on the watches, to the extent that I have it, is more focused on a little bit older watch technology. I'm very comfortable in that 50s to early 2000s range. Like the movements are very similar. They all kind of have the same stuff, just moved around or done a little bit differently. But, if you open up, even something more common, a Submariner or GMT or something from the last few years, like it, they have the hairsprings are a different material. There's just some requirements there that are a little bit intimidating. But for the most part, I mean, it's because I really love vintage watches. Like they have a charm and something about them. Um, that if somebody brought me like a watch that was only a couple years old, I would probably just say, well, you should probably just take it to like a real watchmaker, you know,
Yeah.
because the other thing is that I have to figure out which watches I restore, right? And I am overwhelmed with requests to do it. So when I look at one to think about, I'm thinking about not only the watch itself, but also like the story behind it, who owns it, what it means
Hmm.
to them. And then also, I need it to be I need something to restore, right? Like if it's in perfect running order and it just needs like a routine service to maintain that, there's not like, and not that I wouldn't ever do that, but like that would have to be a rarity on the channel because the point of the thing is to show the journey of the watch going from one state to the other, not
100%. Yeah.
exactly the same
Yeah.
perfectly mint thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I assume at the beginning you must have worked on your own watches, and I know you've used eBay to find watches used for parts or bad pictures, and you get lucky and get something that you can fix. Over the years, has it become more challenging to source watches,
Yeah.
or has the fame of your channel given you better access?
No, it's just gotten harder. I think I should have just like I should have just shut my mouth about trying to get people into the hobby because now it feels like if there's a broken one on eBay, it goes for more than the one that's in good condition. It's like everybody's fighting it out, trying to get the good deal. So yeah, no, I
The
think I
Marshall
made that.
increase tax.
Yeah, I now I need to like switch plans and start a business where I sell like lightly broken watches on eBay.
What's your favorite watch that you've brought back to life? Now, I know some of them have historical not issues, but historical meaning for someone that, is his grandfather's watch that he wore during World War II and that it's been in his family forever. Or maybe it was a watch that you were gifted when you got married or whatever. What's your favorite one so far? Or do you have a favorite one?
I do. I have a couple. My personal favorite is that Hoyer, again, because that was kind of my grail. But my favorite experience, let's call it, with a watch and somebody was, it's interesting. It's actually, I believe it's the video that has the most views that I've ever done. But that's not the reason that I like it. You know, I was at the stage where I was just starting to feel comfortable taking watches in from the outside. I was, working on my own stuff the whole time up until this point, and I had done 3 or 4 watches for people, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to like feel a little bit more comfortable with this. And I got a message from a lady who's local to me here. I live in Seattle, and she lives about half an hour away, and she said, I don't. I've seen a few of your videos, and I'm reaching out because I don't know what else to do. And she was just like, if you can help me in any way or point me in a direction or do anything for me. And basically, she had a watch that belonged to her dad, and he wore it every single day. He had bought it in Vietnam, and when he came home, he just kept on wearing it. She had all these pictures, and he had the thing on no matter what. I mean, he was a mountain biker. He's wearing the watch, and it was a Rolex Explorer.
Oh, I remember this video.
Yeah, it was 1016, like one of my favorite watches. I have one now because of that video. I like went and hunting one down because it was I fell in love with that watch. But at any rate, and I said, and what had happened was she made a big mistake. She didn't realize that the crown needed to be screwed down on a watch like that, and she went clammy, which is, if you've never done it before, it involves shoving your hand down into the sand and the water repeatedly. And she did that at the ocean here in Seattle, like salt water, and it flooded the watch with salt water. And she took it to a few local places here, and they told her no way. Then she took it to the official Rolex place here, and they said, okay. And then they said, well, never mind. We're not actually going to be able to look at it or work on it, but we'll send it to Rolex in Geneva. So they did that, and Rolex said no way and sent it back. Now, this lady was like, look, I'm willing to pay. Like she said, that's not the issue. She said, I just can't find anybody that will do this. And she's just heartbroken. She genuinely felt like she ruined her dad's watch and that it was her mistake, so she was carrying that burden. And I said, I set expectations because, salt water in a watch can be very, very destructive. And it had been a number of months since it happened. But I said, I will take a look and I'll do what I can for you. And I did. And, it was the video's up. You can see it was a nightmare. It was a real journey. But I got to give it back to her in person. And, she was crying. And, you could tell that there was a deep connection between that object and her. And, that being one of my early experiences with it, where most of the time I don't ever meet the person or get to see them. So I send the watch back and then I'll get an email a few days later and they'll say, hey, I got the watch. Thank you so much. And that's it. Right. And that's great. I mean, no problem. But this was different. This, I could feel it. I could tell what was actually happening there. And that really solidified it for me about kind of what my role in this process was and why I do what I do. So that one will always stand out to me as one that clarified the meaning of this stuff for me.
Wow. That's an amazing story for sure. So I had a question on movements, and it's hard to follow up that answer, to be honest with you. But I was wondering if there's a particular movements or complications that you dread working on or that are particularly challenging for you.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time it was chronographs. Chronographs are, I think, for the normal, like, unless you're going to start getting into like high end complications, minute repeaters or some crazy stuff like that you just don't really see. Like, people don't have that. Those are $100,000 watches or whatever. But until you get, to that point, chronographs are kind of the king of the hill for people like me. And they have a lot going on because they have, in most cases, they have just all the normal stuff that you have to do to make a watch run properly. And then they just add this extra layer of stuff. So I was pretty intimidated by that for a long time. Eventually, I think I got over it. And I took a class again from Marc Lovick. He had been working on a chronograph course for a while, and I took that and I took all these notes, and we had a couple of practice movements in that online class, and I finally got the confidence up to do it about a year ago. I released the first one that I did as a chronograph, but that was kind of my white whale. Like, realistically, I probably won't go that much further than those. Like, I don't think I'm going to do any like fuse chain stuff or super old stuff. The stuff that comes up more often, though, that can be a little bit intimidating. It sounds funny, but it's the different ways that the brands do calendar works. That is very not standard. Like, every one of them has their own idea. Some of them are really complicated. Some of them are remarkably simple. And every time, it's funny because the way that it works is like you take apart the watch, you clean it, you put back together the part that runs. And so that part always feels comfortable. And then you flip the watch over and it's like, okay, I need to put in the calendar. And that's all often a spot for me where I'm like, okay, where am I at? Like, what do I do here? Like, I've got all these parts, and maybe I'll fire up the video that I have of me taking the thing apart, again, going back to the early days of reference photos, if you will. But this is like a, glistening 4K video that I've got. Like, how can I go wrong? Which angle do you want? Right. But yeah, that's actually the thing that more on a routine basis comes up that is a little bit intimidating, where it's just like, how does Omega do this again? How does Seiko do this again? How does Rolex do this again? And because, one of the things that does come up for me all the time, it's a blessing and a curse, but is that I'm almost always just working on different stuff. If you talk to real watchmakers, they'll say, oh, I know how to do all the ETA movements like inside and out, or I'm a Rolex. I do these 3 movements. We have an Omega service center here in Seattle, and I've talked to some of the people that work there, and I'll be like, well, how many different movements do you work on? like in a given week or whatever. And they're like, no, it's not a week. They're like, it's ever, and they're like, and the answer is 3.
Wow.
Like, so they just get one, and there's people that work on one, just like the chronograph guy. It's just like, give him the chronograph movement, and he just jams on those all day. That's all. So they know every single thing, all the little tricks, all the little gotchas, all the little, I know what this is, and for me, it's the complete opposite. I have to kind of reset my brain every time I start a movement, but it makes the videos more interesting, and it's more challenging and interesting for me too.
Yeah, I can imagine for sure.
Yeah.
It's remembering which screws go where. I don't know how you do that. But again, with the video, I guess you watch back, and with time, I guess you know which screws go where.
I don't actually have to do that for the screws. You'd be surprised. I know it looks crazy to see a big pile of them, but the process of elimination is really powerful with that. Oftentimes the screws that go on the big plates, there's usually 2 plates and then a balance bridge as well that go on the main plate. Oftentimes those screws are all the same. Right. So you've got 5 or 6 that are just like, I already know what all those are. So take those out of the equation because they're too big to go anywhere else in the movement anyway. Right. So then, it's like, oh, I need these 2 screws for the pallet fork bridge. Right. Well, there's 2 things that are always true of those type of screws. One of them is that they're short, right? Because they only go into the main plate. So if they're long, they'll actually come out the other side. So they have to be kind of stubby. And the top has to be very thin and flat so that they sit flush so that the balance wheel can clear them. So now when I look at a pile of screws, all I have to do is go, okay, I'm looking for short ones with a super thin top on them. And maybe there's only 2 of those. So there they are. Or maybe there's a couple that are similar and I just have to go, okay. And then the other thing that happens is that on a lot of movements, the manufacturers kind of hold your hand a little bit. They will, on screws that are on the watchmaker side, on the side with like the train of wheels, the side that you see on my videos the most, they will have polished screw heads. But on the ones that go on the bottom underneath the dial where you can't see them, they'll leave them flat, like they're not polished at all. So you can
interesting.
And so you can go, oh, okay, well, if I look at a screw, I can just look at the screw head and I can go, okay, this one's, matte finish or whatever. So that's going to be on the other side. That's not the one I'm looking for right now on the top. So it actually, that part, funny enough, comes naturally pretty quickly. It's the stuff that you don't see every time that can really kind of jam you up.
Yeah. So I've seen components break, like jewels and other things, and things not fit, missing parts, even stuff flying off your desk.
Oh, yeah.
What's the most aggravating thing that's happened when putting together one of these videos?
Definitely losing a part, especially like a click spring, right? I mean, it's a wire spring in most cases, and they are so small. Like I could put it in your hand, and if your eyes were closed, you wouldn't know that I'd placed it in your hand. Like they just don't weigh anything. And oftentimes they have like 2 hooked ends on them. So they'll grab onto any fiber, shirt, chair, anything that you can. And it's funny because it challenges your patience. It really, this is a good hobby for somebody like me because I naturally want to take like shortcuts. When I'm working on a car, it'll be like, you should probably remove the air intake hose so that you can get to those screws. And I'm like, but what if I just jam it right underneath at this angle? And it's like the whole removing the thing would just take a few minutes. But my brain is like, but if I don't need to do it, then and so one of the challenges I had to myself at the beginning of this journey was to slow myself down and try to do it right. And when you lose a part or when it's currently missing, it's weird because like I'm sitting at the desk right now that I do my videos on. And it's like, imagine you're at your computer desk and you're working on something and it flies away, but it's small, right? It's not in the living room, right? It's within 3 feet of me somewhere, but I don't know where it's at, and it becomes this, you start to kind of bargain with the gods, the watchmaker, it's just like, just let me find this. and then I'll stop working on it for the night. Like I pushed it a little, but like Kronos, the watchmaking god, I appease you, but I'll tell you, there are few better feelings in the world than when it's been an hour and a half and you actually do find the thing,
Oh, yeah.
It just, you just feel so dumb. You're just like, if I just was more careful, I wouldn't have lost this. And, the whole time I'm down on the ground with my flashlight and my magnet, I'm thinking like, is this eBay search going to be the one where it goes, yep, there's 100 of these available, no problem? Or the one where it goes, did you mean this phrase? And I'm like, no, I didn't mean this phrase. There's none around, because you're really at the mercy of the parts, in many ways with these watches.
I know what you mean. My watchmaking is limited to sizing bracelets and the occasional small stuff. And I have a Grand Seiko, and those links have tiny screws heads on either side, and they're very small. And I dropped one onto the carpet. I met Kronos that day because I was sitting there and I have this super high powered 8,000 lumen flashlight that I had sideways trying to cast shadows, and it was like a solid hour of prolific language. And I found it, but God, I can't imagine a click spring or,
So you have Kronos' favor. Very nice.
Yeah, I got lucky. Very lucky. So what surprised you so far during the development of your channel? What's something that you didn't see coming and it happened and you're pleased that it has? What do you think?
I think two things. I think one is that that I was able to create a space to relax. I'm very conscious of what I talk about during the videos, and I don't talk about anything really outside, like current events. I try not to talk about stressful stuff. People, I've gotten a decent amount of feedback, but about the channel over the years, but the one that's really resonated the most is people kind of equating it to some type of therapeutic thing where they, I've had like a shocking number of people say, I was going through something really hard. I'm getting a divorce. I lost a parent. I'm sick. I'm at the hospital. And your videos help me. I suffer from anxiety, and this is the only thing that can calm me down. These type of things, which I was like, look, I always wanted them to be interesting or entertaining or whatever, right? All the things that you would expect from a YouTube video like this. But I did not expect it to hit on a level that was a little deeper than that, a little more towards the calming in a more meaningful way, I guess, type of thing. And then the other one is simple, but I didn't plan on this appealing to the as broad of an audience as it ended up doing. I thought it would be, honestly, I thought it would be for people like us three, like watch nerds that are into this stuff, and would be like, I'd like to do, this is interesting because I'm into watches. But I remember when it started to grow, I saw a lot of comments from people saying like, I don't even own a watch, or I don't even really care about watches, but I watched this whole video. And I was like, maybe there's more meat on the bone there for a broader audience than I had originally thought. Honestly, I didn't care. Like I made these videos because I wanted to, like there was no grand plan behind it. I just, I wanted to show people the things that I found fascinating about this process and about watches. And, I have some experience with trying to be the intermediary between something that is really complicated, but that I also find fascinating, and kind of the everyday person who's not as into it as we are. The game that I covered is really complicated too. So I had a similar role there. So I was trying to kind of reprise that for this. That was why I did the channel. I just didn't think that as many people would find it as interesting as I do.
Yeah, like I said before we recorded, you come for the watches and you stay for the Marshall.
Yeah, I'll take it.
So you recently got into selling watchmaking tools and kits. You had mentioned before Sutcliffe Hanson, I think was the name. What led you down that alleyway and get involved into online sales?
Yeah, so when your YouTube channel kind of blows up, like when it hits that bigger level like mine did a few years ago, where I was like, wow, this is beyond what I thought it would be. Most of the time, a good run on YouTube's about 7 years. That's you kind of did it if you have a good 7 year arc on YouTube where it's like that. And I'm just aware that I'm going to keep making these videos. I love doing it. I don't need to have some huge audience behind it, so I'm not really that focused. But I'm still looking at it and going, I want to take advantage of this. And what ends up happening is you get approached by the machine. This is the advertisement machine behind YouTube. So this is sponsored. Everybody runs or most people run ads on their video that are like, through YouTube, they call that AdSense video ads. But then Squarespace comes to you, and Men's Shave Club comes to you, and NordVPN comes to you, and
MeUndies and
MeUndies,
everything else.
All seen these huge campaigns for Casper mattresses, etc. And they come to you and they say, we'll give you a lot of money to talk about our product on your video. And, as an adult, it is, I don't feel comfortable just ignoring that entirely, right? Like, I don't just feel comfortable going like, nah, I don't need that, right? It's like, this is a window, that I have to consider the monetary part of this whole thing too. But I freaking hate those ads. I hate them. They disrupt the video. They suck. I'm trying to really tell a story of a watch. I'm trying to keep you immersed in this thing. And if I'm talking about a watch and then I go, like, hey, do you need a VPN solution? Use code Wristwatch 25. It's like, oh my God, right? Like my ears just grate at that. I get it. I don't have any problem with YouTubers who do that. You do what you got to do. But damn, if I can avoid it, I will. It's the same reason, like, I don't ask for people to subscribe. Like, if you watch my videos, I never say, like, smash that like button. I never say, subscribe, because it's just like, everybody says that. My goal is to try to make people subscribe because they want to see my next video, not because I'm begging them. I never appeal to the algorithm on my videos, right? I never say, like, if you leave a comment, then I'll get more stuff. It's like, why does my viewer care? Like, that's not their problem. That's my problem.
But think about it. What if, oops, the click spring went flying onto my Casper mattress?
Okay.
There you go.
That is great. Yeah, that I could do. See, that's funny. Like, that I could make into a story. But anyway, and so when faced with that decision, I did have to make a call, though. Am I going to go down that road? I could do it my way, where, like, I'm really picky about what sponsorships I would take. I would be careful with it and use a deft touch, and I would tell the sponsor, I'm going to do it my way or we're not doing business. I'm not, that kind of stuff. But or I could bet on myself, as it were. Instead of pointing all of the audience I have, at NordVPN, I could point them at something that I built. So one of the things that happened as a result of the channel kind of growing was that a lot of people were like, hey, I want to try this. Like, this looks cool. I want to try this hobby. And and the thing that they always got stuck on was the tools, because, try it out. Like, go, you go, okay, I'm ready to get into the watchmaking. I need to get some tweezers and some screwdrivers. And you go to one of the big watch, supply stores, and you type in tweezers, and you're going to get 70 responses. And you're like, I don't even know where to start. And then, you type in screwdrivers, and there's like, here's these ones for $7, or here's these ones for $200. And you're like, well, I don't want to get the crappy stuff that's just going to break and make my life miserable, but damn, $200. Like, can't I just buy the 4 that I really need to start with so that I can try this out? And so I wanted to smooth over that. I wanted to make it more accessible and try to take a stab at making watchmaking as a hobby kind of more of a thing. Obviously, it's still a niche thing. But I felt like there was enough people asking that I just kind of had that sense that there would be something there. And so I partnered up with a friend of mine named Alex Hanson. So my last name is Sutcliffe and his last name is Hanson. So we just named the site Sutcliffe Hanson because all the good names are taken, basically. And I designed all the toolkits and he handled most of the business stuff and the website. And we worked on it for about a year. And then we launched it about a year and a half ago with all the toolkits and stuff. And then we've just been building on it since then.
Have you ever considered, is there plans to expand on that and ever maybe even do your own watch, or is that something that's been considered?
Yes. So there are numerous plans. We actually did dabble with modifying or doing something with a watch. That is a much deeper pool than you might think at the onset. So we've shelved that for now, just because we're overwhelmed with our other stuff. And then we're also working on some. We're really excited about some of the expansions that we're doing around repairing watches, and being able to potentially work on watches that are that other shops say no to, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We've identified, we believe that there's a segment right now that without going too deep into it, broad strokes from the watchmaking industry, there are not enough watchmakers, period. The companies will pay for you to go to watchmaking school just in the hopes that you take the job with them. Like, you don't even have to, but they're kind of like, hey, good job at school. Just so you know, here's the seat, and if you go work for them, then great, because there's just not enough. And so when it comes to old watches, like the type that I do on the channel, it's really common for shops to just turn you away straight up, because finding parts, there's gremlins, they're a pain in the butt. If you're going to warranty them, they end up being, it ends up costing way more than the watch costs to do it. So then if the person flakes out, if somebody goes, oh, it was, $1,500 or $2,000 to fix this watch, it's only worth a couple hundred, never mind. And now the watchmaker's stuck having done all the work and they've got a watch that's worth a couple $100, right? So their reaction in many cases is, I'm just not going to deal with this stuff. And so, for me, I'm like, well, maybe there's enough of a market there that we could charge appropriately, but, be able to fix those. So that's kind of where we're looking next.
Oh, that's cool.
That's very cool. And where do you see the Sutcliffe Media Empire? Sounds like a Bond villain enterprise in about 5 to 10 years.
I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, ideally, I would still be doing Wristwatch Revival. I mean, this is what I love, right? I am one of the luckiest people on the entire planet. Like, the fact that this thing actually hit is already, one of those one in a millions. But I mean, I'm a camera nerd, a computer nerd, a watch nerd, and I get to just work with all this stuff all day, So if they let me keep doing it, I'll keep doing it. Otherwise, it's whatever I get into next. If I see an opportunity to try to share that with the world or show people why I think it's really fascinating or what's interesting about it, I'll probably end up going down that rabbit hole.
So I kind of had a question. Like, I'm sort of like Marc, where I'll size my own bracelets. I've dabbled with, back in the SKX modding days, bezel swaps, crystal swaps, the kind of basic stuff like that. But for somebody that's new, or interested in getting into the movement side of thing, where's, obviously your channel's a great starting point, but do you have any other tips or suggestions, any learning tools that would be helpful?
Yeah, totally. So, the best place to start is working on larger sized movements, right? So, think American pocket watch movements from eBay that you can pick up for $50 that are like a little bit broken. Or if you just want to have something new, that Siegel ST36 or ST3600, it has a couple of different names. But that movement is just a little smaller than a pocket watch movement, but it's bigger than a typical watch movement. And that really helps with visualize, so you can see what you're doing. Bigger parts are easier to pick up. That's a really great place to start from a movement perspective. Now, I did a video of that particular movement where I take it apart and put it back together, kind of just in a simple, it's not a tutorial, right? It's more of a walkthrough, because tutorials are really hard to make, because like you're responsible. Once you call it a tutorial, it's like if you leave something out, it's like it's on you, dude. Like you know. So I definitely called it a walkthrough so that people couldn't pin me down if I screwed it up too bad. But you know, I mentioned him before, but Marc Lovick, you know, we actually sell we partnered with him to sell his watch courses. So he has watch courses that he's done. He has, well, there's 5 of them, but he's still working on the 4th one. But those were what opened the door for me, period. That's why we went to him, because I was looking at it and going, you know, we're selling these watch kits, but there does seem to be kind of the missing component of you buy the tools and you have the movement, but now what? And my little video helps, but like I was thinking about doing tutorials myself, but after I had taken his courses, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do a better job than these. So I just got a hold of him and was like, hey, can we like work out some type of deal where we sell your courses? Because they're better than anything I was going to make anyway. And he was really amenable to it. So we sell those on the site. And to me, the reason that we have them there is that they're the best in the business. They are incredible. The first one teaches you, you know, the basics of the movement. And the second one teaches you how to take it apart and put it back together. And each part is described and shown how it works and all, you know, where it's really in depth. And for me, I had tinkered on my own, similar to stuff you were talking about, Bob, where, you know, I was like, messing around with my watch a little bit. I tried to take one apart and couldn't get it back together, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But once I took the class, it was like, oh, okay. I'm actually starting to put the pieces together now. And it wasn't some, you know, it's a few hours, right? It's not some like, you know, you don't get you're not an official watchmaker when you're done. It's just some kind of basics. So, so that's where I would say to start, because to me, that will tell you if this is for you or not. You know, if that appeals to you, if your brain kind of works that way where you can pick up what he's putting down in those tutorials, I think you have a bright future in watchmaking. If you're kind of going like, I don't get it and I keep screwing it up, it's like, okay, fair enough. This isn't for everybody.
It's not your thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, timezone.com back in the late 90s, early 2000s had a course. Totally. I don't know if they still sell it, but a lot of my friends had got into that and dabbled and have become competent tinkerers.
Yeah, I don't, you know, as far as I know, that's not like a video thing. Is that
no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't video.
I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that was really good and a lot of starts, but I do feel like at this point it's probably a little dated just because, you know, video
100%.
is so powerful, right? For this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we started teasing that you were going to be on our show on Instagram, we put the call out for questions from our audience or for people that know you and so forth. Uh-huh. And normally, because we're still a fairly young show, we wouldn't get many questions, maybe 1 or 2 or none. Mm-hmm. But in your case, we got quite a few. So I've narrowed it down to a handful here. And one of them is from Central Seconds on Instagram. Mm-hmm. He says, Marshall. No, hold on. Let me start that over again. Marshall is awesome. That's what he said. Mm-hmm. Ask him if you could only choose one. Would it be watches or MTG Draft? Now, before you answer, I tell my family who I'm having, especially if I'm excited about a specific guest, because I was genuinely excited about having you on. And I said your name out loud, and one of my kids' ears perked up, and he says, Marshall Sutcliffe? I said, yeah. He says, the guy from Magic the Gathering? I said, I think so, because I remember on one of the videos he had talked about it briefly. He's, oh my God, you're going to have Marshall on the show. He got all excited about it.
Yeah, I do have 2 careers in this space. And that's the card game I was referencing before. You know, it goes all the way back to the 90s and it's still going stronger than ever. And and I do a podcast about drafting it, which is one way that you can play the game. It's my favorite way to play it. And then I also do commentary for the Pro Tour. There's still a professional level Magic, competitive Magic scene. And I'm the lead play-by-play commentator for that. So that's the background on it. But this question is like, those are like literally my 2 favorite activities. Well, I have one more. I have basketball. I play basketball still somehow. I don't know how my bones still make it up and down the court, but I do play that. God, that is so brutal. Like, Doing a draft of magic is like one of the most fun, interesting things you can do. Oh man, I guess I would keep watches at this point just because it's a little newer to me. Like I've been playing Magic for a long time, so maybe I guess you know there's an argument that says like I've kind of done that, and watches are still, even though I've been doing it for a long time, they're still the shiny new toy. So I guess I take watches, but I'd be
Wow, I didn't even have to pull out the there can only be one, just like the Highlander. You chose one.
totally.
So this next question is from at Poet A Royales in Instagram. I think that might be Spanish. How much do you see the watchmaking profession as a livelihood in the future as the mechanical wristwatch has come back into interest and more people?
Yeah. So yeah, if they mean like as a profession, it's
Yeah.
really good right now. We actually have a watchmaking school here in Seattle. It's called the Watch Technical Institute, and it's a 2-year program, and they get a SATA certification, which is like the Rolex one when they're done.
Okay.
And I mean, they are like the companies go to that school to try to woo the students. Like they bring them donuts and stuff, and they're like, "Hey guys, just wanted to check in," because when they graduate, they're like, "Come work for us, like now," right? So the
Wow.
demand is very, very high. If this is a profession that is interesting to you, especially as vocational jobs have become more and more popular, as people are kind of realizing that like the value of a 4-year degree is a little more dubious maybe than it once was, and it's very, very, very expensive to get one. So people are starting to look at other stuff. And I mean, to me, watchmaking is like this kind of perfect middle ground, right? Because it's not like you're outdoors in the winter digging ditches or something, but you still get to work with your hands, but it's in like a nice kind of office-like environment where it's a little more chill, than laying on your back in the cold working on a car or whatever. And but again, it's not just working on spreadsheets or computer stuff. For people that want to work with their hands, it pays pretty well, and you can get a certification in 2 years, and it's cheap to get the certification again because many of the schools are subsidized by some of the bigger watch brands because they're just trying to get more people into the field. So I think it's a great time to go into watchmaking as a profession. For me personally, I'm not certified. I'm not as good as those guys. I do this as a hobby, and that's how
Don't sell yourself short.
well, this is where I mean, there's levels, right? There really are. You go into one of these service centers, and I mean, these guys are incredible. I mean, they are machines when it comes to. They put me to shame. I'm proud
But
of
like you
how far
said, they're
I've come.
working on
But
that same movement
yeah,
over and over
yeah,
and over
it is
again,
true.
whereas you're, doing all kinds.
It is true, but and I'm proud of how far I've come, but there really are levels to this game, as it were. So I'm not looking to go into that. I mean, I make videos, like that's what I do. Like I don't really care. I don't talk about it publicly normally, but like I don't even charge people when I do their watch on the channel because like I had this idea that I would have it be like a little mini side business where I'm like restoring watches too. But the truth is that like I'm making a video. That's why I
Mm.
have the watch. And the people that were coming to me were like old people that couldn't afford it, people that were on their last leg trying to find somebody to work on their dad's or grandpa's watch or whatever. And it just didn't feel right. So I don't even do that. So career wise, that's not really going to be in the cards for me. But I think as a career, it's a really good choice.
And this person says, regards from a fan and rookie watchmaker from Querétaro, Mexico. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
So our next question is from at Dandygram on Instagram. Can Marshall take my Hamilton automatics that stopped running? I don't want it back. I just wanted to see it being revived. So he sent me a picture of the watch. It's one of those Hamilton khakis, relatively modern, with one of those H10 laser calibrated movements. So that was his question. Would you take it, and can you fix it?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that comes from having your channel blow up is that I get asked this stuff just constantly. Like,
I'm sure.
I mean, everybody's super nice about it. Like, I don't get like it's very rare that it's a lot like that. Very kind. I mean, this person's offering to just send me the watch. It's like it's crazy, right? But it is overwhelming. I every channel that I have where people can contact me, they do. And even people contact me on channels that I don't make public. They've called my mom's house.
Holy
Wow.
cow.
Yeah.
That's
The funny part
borderline
is,
creepy.
I thought it was, I was like, what the hell? But the funny part is my stepdad picked it up, and he's like a really nice kind of like boomer guy, and he just talked to the guy for like an hour. I'm like, dude, that was like pretty intrusive, and he's like, well, he was really nice. I'm like, okay. But
that's how they start, and then they're in your bushes.
yeah, but my personal email, which I don't make public, my personal telephone number, which I try to keep, close to the vest, and I still get calls for that. I had one guy show up at the building that I live in, and the person that works at the desk downstairs called, and they were like, hey, this guy says that, you might be able to fix his watch. Funny enough, the guy at the building was like, hey, he left me a message. He was like, I actually have a watch that I could use fixing too. And I'm just like, oh my God. So I try to kind of narrow it down to, oftentimes it gets narrowed down to my Patreon, because they're paying to be on that. So I'll monitor that as best I can. But even then I fall behind on those messages because you know how it is. You have to set boundaries at some point where you have to prevent yourself from burning out. And, one of the ways that I know that I could burn out is if I try to take the burden on of answering every message I get, which, trust me, that is my natural instinct. Like, I feel bad not answering and having to say no to people and not being able to take on people's watches. Like, it makes me feel bad because I want to do all of it. But I'm also, having done content creation for, a number of years now, as my full-time thing, I'm very, very aware of the activities and the burdens that come with it, that are blessings. I'm lucky to be in that position. But also, if I did take that responsibility on full on, I would burn myself out. Like, I would not be able to keep making videos for the long term, and that's my goal. So the answer is no, I won't be able to take on the watch. I do apologize for that, but yeah, it led to a bigger topic, I guess. Okay.
It kind of goes back to the guy asking about whether it's a good time to have a career in this or not. There's obviously a lot of demand for watchmakers that you're seeing firsthand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This next one's from @everyone_hates_me on Instagram again. It's quite the handle.
Yeah.
He asks if it's a good idea to buy the book Watchmaking by George Daniels. Now, before you answer, if I'm not mistaken, George Daniels' book is quite complex. It's not your entry-level watchmaking book.
No, I have that book. Is it a good idea to buy it? If your goal is to actually work on watches, no, you don't need it. Spend it on tools or something else. If you're interested in how watches are made, now there's, the term for somebody who repairs and fixes watches for a living is watchmaker. But in modern day times, when that's a much rarer profession, people get it conflated with somebody who literally creates watches. That's who George Daniels was.
Yeah.
He's GOAT tier. I mean, he's amazing. I read his book. Not that I have that book. I've read parts of it. It's not exactly a sit down and read it type book, watchmaking. But he also wrote a book about his life, and I read that. And I've watched all the videos and interviews. He was a really amazing guy, a kind of a complex, interesting person. But no, you do not need that book. It is going to be way over your head. It's way over my head here. I mean, we're talking about, like, imagine like the teeth on a wheel and what angles you need to cut them at. Like, that is in that book. Like, so if you're
without using computers or CAD or any of that stuff.
Exactly. So get out your slide rule or whatever. Like, no, this is for crazy people who I respect a lot. So if you make a watch using that book, they call that using the Daniels method. That's named after George Daniels. But and the idea behind it is that you learn and get close to mastering every skill needed to take a watch from pieces of metal into a functional timepiece. And that is, he estimates, between like 28 to 30 different disciplines that you have to master. So we're talking about, you're going to put 6 years and have nothing to show for it. Now, if you put 15 years in, then you might end up being, Roger Smith or something. But like,
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just, this is for a whole different level of crazy. So
Yeah.
no, you do not need the book, and you will not get anything very much practical information from it. But it is really interesting, and it looks really cool if you have a copy of George Daniels' Watchmaking on your desk. But it's like
On your
$100.
bookshelf.
Like, it's an expensive book. So
Yeah. So this next one is from Stepan. I believe his name is Stepan. His Instagram handle had various letters that were chopped or not. I think it might have been Swedish or Finnish or something. It was a little different. Anyways, so he asks, does watchmaking take a long time and a lot of financial resources to master and gather the necessary tools in terms of years?
Yeah, if you're talking about mastering it, like getting really competent at it, yeah, it does take a while. It does take a decent number of tools for sure. Getting comfortable-ish with it does not. We were talking about the toolkits we sell. The one we have, this is a starter box. It comes with 4 screwdrivers, tweezers, a loop, a movement, and like a movement holder, a thing to put the movement on. Just to get started and to get yourself comfortable, that's really all you need. So you can get in, that's with the movement in there too. We sell that for like $175, right? Now, you are not going to be able to use that set of tools to restore a watch like I do on the channel. You are going to need quite a bit more tools than that. So yes, if you are looking to get good at this, where you can feel confident working on other people's watches, buy watches, try to flip them, restore them and sell them. Yeah, it does. I would guess it would take, if you're really interested in it, a good year of practice and learning where you're pretty dedicated to it. And monetarily, I don't know. I mean, we sell what we call the complete kit on the site for $900 or 800 and something bucks. And it comes with most of the stuff you need. You need a few extra things, but I don't know, being even a little aggressive with it, $1,500 will get you pretty good. And then there's always more tools to buy that make life easier, that are better versions of what you have and all that kind of stuff. So the sky's the limit as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, I think for your average everyday person, yes, it does take a while, and yes, it is expensive.
Now, here's a question follow up with that. And how if you're a mechanic, your dad was a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes you have your toolbox. When you go work someplace, you bring your tools with you with your toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
You leave that job, you bring that toolbox with you. Is it the same for watchmaking?
It is.
Or when you get a job for Swatch Group, you show up and everything's there?
Yeah, so most watchmakers have a subset of hand tools that they prefer to use. Their favorite screwdrivers, their favorite tweezers that they've dressed a million times and that they use for certain operations. It's very common for watchmakers to modify their tools. In most watchmaking school, you'll get taught some machining and stuff, how to use a lathe and a mill and stuff like that. And you'll actually make some of the tools that you use. So they'll either have ones that they made themselves for specific purposes, or they'll modify existing tools. So a lot of times watchmakers will want to carry their own versions of those. But the bigger like machines and timing equipment, the watch cleaning machine, the pressure tester, all of that type of stuff, the case back removal tool, bracelet tools, all of those type of things are expected to be provided by the person who's running the shop. So, and then if you're brand new, sometimes they will insist that they use your tools as well. Different companies have different levels to which they expect you to do the tasks in a specific way. If you work for a local jeweler, they'll probably just say, like, as long as you do it up to standard, you can do it kind of however you want. But like, if you work for Rolex, they want you to do it using the Rolex part on the Rolex bench, sitting in a Rolex seat, wearing a Rolex jacket, and you're going to do it exactly how they say. Because of the scale that they operate at, they have to have that level of granularity.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I have one last question. This is from Curtis McDonald, who goes by Curtis_McDonald_ on Instagram. What is the best way to contact Marshall about working on some watches? He says he tried Instagram and Patreon, but he just wanted to confirm.
Yeah. Yes, this is what I was talking about before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I have to apologize. I mean, I fall behind on these things, and what I'll do is kind of wait until I have like a block of time that I cut out just for that, and then I blast through them. But the answer is Patreon is the best way to get a hold of me. So if you've messaged me there, I will have the message. I just haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, no problem. So that's pretty much it. Thank you, Marshall, for being so generous with your time and coming onto the podcast. Is there anything you'd like to plug while you're here?
No, nothing to plug. I just wanted to say thanks for having me on, and I appreciate you guys accommodating my schedule as well, so that I got to come on a little later than we originally planned. So I appreciate it.
Oh, no
No
problem at all.
problem at all, man. It was awesome, Marshall. Good meeting you for the
Yeah,
first
great
time
to
here
meet
today
you guys.
too.
Hopefully, I'll see you guys out at an event sometime. We can hang out.
Yeah, I mentioned we're going to the Vancouver Timepiece Show in a couple of weeks, and that's not that far a drive from Seattle. So if
No,
you
it's
get a chance,
not. Yeah, I'm gonna look into it. I was unaware of it, but if I can swing that, I'll send you guys a message and let you know.
yeah,
Awesome,
we'll
man.
all be there. So that'd be great.
Sweet.
So thank you again, Marshall. Time to Calibrate podcast comes out bi-weekly. If you have any questions or suggestions or comments, you can email us at timetocalibrate@gmail.com. And please like, review, subscribe, and all that happy stuff. Every little bit counts, especially as we grow the show. And until next time, T2C out.